Students across the United States walked out of their schools today to demand action on gun control. These are students in Parkland, Florida, chanting MSD for Marjory Stoneman Douglas School. That's where 17 people were killed in a shooting on February 14th. Students and teachers marched to the football field where the school's principal told them to keep fighting for change. The CBC's Stephen D'Souza is there.
At 10 a.m., hundreds of students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas took to the football field here for 17 minutes, 1 minute for each of the victims of last month's shooting. And they were greeted by throngs of media, as well as supporters, parents, people from all over the country, as well as a neighboring school who walked out and showed their support by chanting MSD Strong. The principal took to the microphone telling the kids to keep up the great fight as they continue to push for gun control. He said that together, all Eagles here at MSD are one family, and they have to continue to stick together and show the world their unity. Students here are walking out to call for tighter gun control, a ban on assault weapons, as well as raising the age level and tighter background checks. I spoke with one parent who is out here who has a son at the rally. Here's what she had to say.
It's important towards our healing. A horrific incident happened here a month ago, and our students don't want it to ever happen again. And so they are protesting, and they are taking a stand, and they are working to create change, positive change.
Some students did come to the other side of the fence, and one of them told me that marches like this simply aren't enough.
Main message is walk out. This is for publicity. We don't need this. We're trying to make something right here. We're not trying to just stand here and do this for 17 minutes. It doesn't mean anything. We should walk out every day until something changes.
The next big rally is the main one on March 24th in Washington, D.C. More than 500,000 people are expected, and there are thousands of other rallies taking place across the country. And students say the most important thing is that when the media and the public attention wanes, that they have to keep up the fight for gun control. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, Parkland, Florida.
Mass student walkouts took place in other parts of the U.S. and around the world, and Natasha Fata is working on that story for us. And Natasha, what are you seeing?
Well, when you hear from the organizers of these walkouts and protests, Andrew, they say more than 3,000 individual demonstrations were organized for today throughout the United States, but really right around the world. So let's take a look at some of the images from Arizona to Massachusetts, New York, of course, Florida, California, and all points in between. Students walked out of their classrooms, went into the streets, went into gathering places in their communities, and basically said enough is enough. And they wanted the lawmakers, those with authority in their country, to pay attention and try and do something to curb the amount of gun-related violence that's taking place in the United States. Let's have a look at some of the specific images, including from Missouri, where students walked out and also laid out 17 white chairs, one chair for each of the individuals that lost their lives a month ago in Parkland, Florida. There was also a substantial walkout at the Columbine High School, which of course many people will remember was one of the most devastating school shootings that took place in 1999. And then also in Littleton, Colorado, a number of students came out. They had a podium, they spoke to the press, and some of them described what their concerns are and what it is they're hoping to achieve.
I want to see legislation that supports nationwide universal background checks and a federal assault weapons ban. However, I want to be clear that I am not here to question the Second Amendment or take away anyone's guns. I would simply like to see more regulations to prevent the deaths of thousands of innocent children.
And thousands of innocent children were also out protesting in Iceland, Mexico, Germany, Australia, all over the world. International communities were saying we want to show solidarity with children in the United States. So they too organized their marches. But of course, the critical story is in the U.S. and particularly in the Capitol, where thousands of students went to Washington, D.C. They descended at the White House on the Capitol on Pennsylvania Avenue. And they wanted to get, of course, the president's attention, key members of Congress, to listen to them. Now, the Washington walkout was actually organized by the youth offshoot of the Women's March. This is called Empower, and they helped organize some of the demands that they want followed through by lawmakers. That would include having restrictions on who can buy a gun, having background checks, and also a ban on all assault weapons in the United States. So we should note that while they were demonstrating essentially for some of the most important lawmakers in the country, the president himself was not at the White House. He's traveling outside of that area at this time. And we want to leave you with something that's become a bit of a rallying cry for this movement with students. And it comes from the woman who was the author, the journalist that the school in question is named after. We're talking, of course, about Marjory Stoneman Douglas. Let's bring up her quote that many students are posting on social media. She said, "Be a nuisance when it counts. Do your part to inform and stimulate the public to join your action. Be depressed and discouraged and disappointed at failure and the disheartening effects of ignorance, greed, corruption, and bad politics, but never give up." And that's certainly a sentiment we're hearing from a lot of students.
Is it ever? All right. Thanks, Natasha.
You're welcome.